This is The Comics Alternative, episode 138, a look at the June Previews catalog.
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the beginning of June, and as we do the first of every month, we look through that month's previews catalog. So today, Andy and I are going to go through and highlight a lot of the things that we find in the June previews catalog, and there's a lot.
Yes.
Just be warned, dear listener. Fear not. But before we get to those solicits, we should let all of our listeners know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. All of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are at 20 to 35% off cover price. And every single month, you're going to find incredible specials. Now, sometimes those specials are at 40% off cover price, sometimes 45% off, sometimes 50% off cover price. But often, the discounts are more impressive than that.
And even though we don't have the specials for the month of June up on DCB Service, you can be sure that there's going to be plenty of great bundles. Most of those are usually at 50% off.
That's right. They have great deals on bundles as we highlight every episode, but there are also a lot of other specials on single issues and not just comics, but books, toys, and what have you. So pretty soon you will find the June specials up if you go to the website, and that is dcbservice.com. Please go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
Yes, please do.
And just to remind listeners, we make it easy for you to get in touch with DCB Service because if you go to our website, we have a little icon of an envelope. And if you click on that, then it will open your email program and it'll have in the subject line, the two guys with PhDs sent me. And you can send them quickly an email that says, hey, I heard about you on the Comics Alternative.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and that will help us.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of the specials that they're sure to have up for the month of June are going to be a lot of the things that we highlight in this month's previews catalog. So you want to go ahead and get into our discussion of those solicits.
Yeah, and I'm just going to tell listeners, take a few deep breaths, grab your favorite beverage, and get ready.
Yeah, there's a lot here. We start where we usually do at the front of the catalog in the Dark Horse section. And I have some place that I want to begin in Dark Horse, but do you have a title you want to start with?
The first thing I have, Derek, is on page 36.
Oh, the same thing that I have then.
All right.
So you can share.
Okay. Well, I'm always intrigued with anything that has to do with Matt Kindt. And I saw something that at first I thought it said Mind Management #1, but it actually says New Management #1. And what we have here is we have a one-shot standalone epilogue to Mind Management. And if listeners to this podcast know that Mind Management is rapidly coming to a close, so this looks like, Derek, this is like kind of a wrap-up issue, a standalone wrap-up issue.
Yeah. Now, am I incorrect in thinking that there may be more to the Mind Management world in the months to come? Did I hear that somewhere?
I have not heard that, but that would be interesting.
I could be completely off base, but for all practical purposes, Mind Management, as we have known it, is going to be ending soon. But you're right. There is this standalone one-shot New Management that is going to be coming out in August. So I know that's one that I also wanted to highlight as well. I go next to page 40. How about you?
I am also on page 40.
Ah, boy, we're reading each other's minds. So, yeah, this is a new work from the brothers Gabriel Ba and Fabio Moon, two brothers. And the way the solicit describes this is interesting. It says, twin brothers Omar and Yaqub may share the same features, but they could not be more different from one another. After a brilliantly violent exchange between the young boys, Yaqub is sent from his home in Brazil to live with relatives in Lebanon, only to return 5 years later as a virtual stranger to the parents who bore him, his tensions with Omar unchanged. Family secrets engage the reader in this profoundly resonant story about identity, love, loss, deception, and the disillusion of blood ties.
Yeah, this looks like a great title, and listeners who are familiar with Ba and Moon and probably have read Day Tripper, which is a wonderful book and very colorful book. Now, this is going to be a black and white volume, but the great artwork and great storytelling, I'm sure, is still going to be there. They get a really nice blurb from Publishers Weekly, which is really nice. And although we only get one page of sample art, this really, really looks like a nice title.
Yeah. So you're like me. You really enjoyed Day Tripper as well.
I did.
Yeah. I like that. I read that as it was coming out in the limited series from Vertigo. I also got the trade when it came out. Now, I did not get the deluxe edition when it came out, I don't know, some point last year, I think it was, because I didn't think that there was much different or at least new material in the deluxe edition, as sometimes DC Vertigo puts in their deluxe editions. But, whether you get the individual issues, the deluxe, or the regular trade, you should definitely check out Day Tripper. And then it would be a great way of anticipating Two Brothers from Dark Horse.
Yep. Yeah, and it looks like it's even from the cover. You've got the two brothers, or actually you've got an image of a face with a slash down the middle, and one brother on one side and one brother on the other side. So this is going to be a lot of not only a great story, but it's going to do some examination of two different types of people and the way they think. And I think these guys have proved in Day Tripper that they're very capable of getting into what makes people tick.
Exactly. And I wonder how much, if any, of Two Brothers is going to be autobiographical.
I wonder as well.
Yeah. I mean, here you have two brothers who are comics creators writing a book called Two Brothers, and we know that their home is in Brazil, just as Ba and Moon, their home is Brazil. So, curious.
Yeah, you think they fought over any aspects of making this book together?
I don't know. It'd be great if we could get them on the show for an interview and ask them.
That would be great.
Wow. Okay, I'll have to contact Ob at Dark Horse and see if that's possible.
Oh, that would be great.
Now, I next go to actually, you turn the page, and I have a couple things there. Or one thing.
On page 41?
No, you turn the page. This would be 43.
Oh, okay. I have a little thing on page 41.
Oh, I think I know what that is, though.
Yeah. On page 41, I've got the first trade paperback of 8 by Mike Johnson and Raphael Albuquerque. And listeners may remember that we reviewed the first issue of 8 on the podcast quite a while back. So this is one of those titles that I really liked the first issue, but I decided to wait until the trade, and now the trade is coming out. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm the same way and did the same thing as you have done with 8. I love the first issue, and what was it? Was it back in March that we reviewed it?
And that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was a little while ago, but I didn't get subsequent issues because I wanted to read everything collected in a trade. So now that trade is going to be coming out pretty darn soon. In fact, October 7th is the release date according to the catalog. So if we turn the page, we find on 43, there are a couple things that I want to mention here. One is that we have a trade paperback of The Fifth Beatle, the Brian Epstein story. This was written by Vivek Tiwari. And a couple of years ago, Gene and I interviewed Vivek about The Fifth Beatle. So now it's coming out in paperback. If you didn't get the nice hardbound edition, you can get this paperback. But something else on that same page that is worth mentioning, I'm not going to get because of the cost, but I wish I could get, and this is P. Craig Russell's Murder Series and Other Stories Gallery Edition.
I wish I could get that too.
Yeah, so this is a hardcover. It is 12 1/8 by 17 1/4 inches, so it is a big book, literally. 232 pages, according to the solicit. And what you'll have here is a lot of really nice art, complete stories, printed at artboard size in a collection of stunning, complete adaptations of works by Neil Gaiman, H.P. Lovecraft, Ray Bradbury, Mike Mignola, Clive Barker, and Oscar Wilde. There's even The Spirit Story, Art Walk, and much more stunning artwork by this legendary graphic storyteller. And P. Craig Russell is one of those artists that demands a larger format, as they're calling it, a gallery edition. It's just that at $125, I cannot afford it.
I can't either. I would love to have it, and maybe in stock trades will have a nice discount, but I wouldn't expect it to be too huge a discount. But still, if you are a fan of any of these creators and have the money, this is definitely going to be something you're going to want to pick up.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure the DCB service is going to have some kind of decent discount. It's just even with a discount, it's a little more than I would probably want to put in.
Yeah.
But definitely worth checking out. If this were the perfect world, then I would have the money to get that and not even think twice about it.
Yep. Me too.
Okay, I next go to page 46.
Same here.
Man, we could just stop right now and one of us can do this until the other gets tired.
Maybe so. I think I probably have a couple of things that you might not have much interest in.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Okay. So you want to take this one?
Yes, we have here The Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, which is actually a book that came out, Derek, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this came out in paperback in 1996 from Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow, and Dave Stewart did the cover for this. And the solicit is Front and Center, America. Here comes action. Here comes adventure. Here comes The Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, a roller coaster ride through the minds of Jeff Darrow and Frank Miller, the tag team that brought you, reeling with their hard-hitting series, Hard Boiled. Everything you remember about being 38 years old and watching monster movies is right there, but with all the magnified detail that you always wanted to see.
So this is a new edition, a second edition. They're putting this out now in hardcover, and this will also be out in October. Now, I have never read Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot. Had you?
No, and I was going to ask you if you initially picked it up when it first came out.
No, I didn't, but I do like the work of Frank Miller, and I especially love the art of Jeff Darrow. The first issue of Shaolin Cowboy we reviewed when it came out about not quite 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Time flies, and I'm forgetting how long it's been since that first issue of the new Shaolin Cowboy. But I love his art, and so this is something that is definitely more affordable than the P. Craig Russell. So I'll probably get this.
Yeah, at $20, this is definitely one to pick up. And Derek, I misspoke. I said that the cover was by Dave Stewart. It's not. The coloring is by Dave Stewart. It's been recolored by Stewart.
Okay.
So yeah, this looks like a definite to pick up.
I skip a couple of pages and have something I just want to briefly mention on page 49. and that is Battle Pug Volume 4.
Okay, I had something different on page 49.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, this is, Mike Norton's well-known webcomic Battle Pug, and what he's been doing is collecting various storylines into these nice hardbound editions, or at least, book editions. This is a trade paperback, and it is coming in at $14.99 before any discount that you get through DCB service. So I've been reading the other Battle Pug books, and I'm going to get this one as well.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a pretty good one. The book that I have is right next to that is called Grimace Island by Art Baltazar and Franco. And those are also the guys that do Itty Bitty Hellboy and Tiny Titans, which I'm not really a fan of. But they also did a book that I reviewed on the site, Aw Yeah, which was a really, really fun kids comic. And this looks like this is going to be a really, really fun all-ages comic that's, hopefully this is something we would get at the library, because I think the kids would, and the adults would really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I turned the page and have something on 50.
Okay.
And this is the Eltonville Club number 2. Now, this is a resolicit, because I can't remember when. It was sometime last year that this was solicited, issue number 2 of Evan Dorkin's Eltonville Club. It came out, but they... I know that they canceled that order because I had pre-ordered and said it will be resolicited. So now it's resolicited for coming out in August. And I don't know, are you a fan of Evan Dorkin?
I haven't really read. I'm not sure that I've read any of Dorkin's work.
Oh, hilarious sense of humor. I guess the more serious side of him you can find in the series he does with his wife, and that is Beasts of Burden. But the comedic side of him, he did a lot with slave labor graphics years ago, and I know him primarily from his comic Milk and Cheese, which is just funny as hell. It is hilarious. I even have a Milk and Cheese poster up in my office. It's one of their stories where milk and cheese, and basically that's the premise of Milk and Cheese. You have a carton of milk and a wedge of cheese, and they're angry, and they destroy a lot of things. And so the tagline of Milk and Cheese used to be "Dairy products gone bad." And you would see them in a lot of really weird and unlikely scenarios and situations. But one in particular is called Merv Griffin. And basically you have Milk and Cheese destroying things all around them. And as they destroy things, they yell, "Merv Griffith, Merv Griffith, Merv Griffith." And they just keep doing that. And then in the very last panel, it's almost like a close-up of their faces. And they scream one final time, "Merv Griffith," and that's it.
Okay.
So does it make sense? Not necessarily, but that's part of the humor. So anyway, Evan Dorkin, I just mentioned this to describe his sense of humor, and he brought this sense of humor in a little more refined way to the Eatonville Club, which is a comic that he had created several years ago. And then last year he was going to bring back the Eatonville Club, I guess in 2 issues, and then collect all the Eatonville Club stories together in a collected volume. I think what had happened at the time is that about a year or so ago, Evan had some kind of hand problems, maybe an injury or an accident. And I know this because he was on board for an interview on the Comics Alternative, but then he had this come up with his hand. He had to put off some of his work, and he said he would rather wait until he gets this Eatonville Club material finished before he's on for an interview. So, we'll do whatever he wants to do, and I hope he does come on for an interview. And it's good to see that the Eatonville Club number 2 is being solicited and will be out in a couple of months.
Okay.
So where do you go next in the catalog?
I have a brief stop on page 61.
Okay, I have something before that.
Okay.
And this, I guess, is the way it's described. It just seemed interesting. This is issue number 1 of 6, This Damned Band.
What page?
58, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you.
Okay.
58. And up at the top of the page it says Spinal Tap meets Ghostbusters, and I think that's what caught my attention. So this is written by Paul Cornell with art by Tony Parker, and the solicit is 1972. The world's most famous rock band thought they were worshiping Satan, only to find that they were actually worshiping Satan. From Paul Cornell and Tony Parker comes a darkly hilarious adventure of black magic and classic rock. So you have one-page sample art, which looks good, Parker's art. But again, what caught my attention was Spinal Tap meets Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing for sure.
Mm-hmm. So you say you go where next?
I go to 61 just for a brief stop.
Okay.
And this is a collection of another book that we reviewed the first issue of, and that was Richard Corbin's Rat God. And Derek, at the time, I remember we both had some issues with Rat God #1. I think we both enjoyed Corbin's art, and we talked a little bit about his adaptation of other people, especially Poe, versus
and Lovecraft,
and versus doing his own thing. And I know we were both somewhat disappointed in that first issue. So I don't know. I'm thinking about picking this one up. This collects Rat God 1 through 5. Yeah. Are you going to pick it up?
Yes, I am, and this is a nice hardcover edition. Now, maybe I am engaging in some kind of historical revisionism. I don't remember saying that I was disappointed with Rat God issue #1. I didn't know entirely what to make of Rat God #1, but the thing with Richard Corbin is, and I think especially his most recent work, is that I don't know. I have faith that the story will come together, and I think that there was a lot put out there in issue #1 that, outside of the context of the rest of the story, may have left a lot of questions, maybe more than readers would normally want in a first issue. But as much as I like Richard Corbin, I trust in him, and I was willing to wait around to see how everything played out in Rat God. So, for the record, I wasn't disappointed, but I was suspending judgment, even though I have faith in Richard Corbin's work.
Well, I didn't mean to pull you into my disappointment, and I was a bit disappointed in it, but I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah.
Like you said, he does some wonderful stuff, but for me, the first issue was a disappointment.
Yeah. And it says at the top, you already mentioned Corbin reinventing Lovecraft. And so this is very Lovecraft influenced. And he did a series of Lovecraft adaptations. And so he definitely knows the writing. He knows the Gothic horror genre. You mentioned his previous adaptations also of Edgar Allan Poe. So, yeah, I'm interested in seeing how the rest of Rat God plays out. Because I don't think I went back to read any issues after #1.
Yeah, I didn't.
So I go next to page 63.
Actually, I have one short thing on page 62, and that is The Green River Killer, a true detective story by Jeff Jensen and Jonathan Case. Now, this is a reissue. This book originally came out in 2011, and actually that year, that was one of my favorites graphic novels of the year, maybe my favorite graphic novel of the year. It's very much a true crime story, and Jeff Jensen, I believe, was actually the man who worked the case, and then Jonathan Case adapted this. It's very much a police procedural, so if you like police procedurals, you're really, really going to get into this. If you don't like them that much, it's really more to me of a police procedural than it is a true crime story, but although there's quite a bit of true crime involved.
Well, it was last month that Jonathan Case's New Deal was solicited, and they listed Green River Killer, and I think this new edition along with that, didn't they?
I think they did, yeah.
At least I hope, because I just last week pre-ordered for the May release from Previews and DCB Service Green River Killer, and so I would guess it is this new edition.
I think if you like police procedurals or neo-noir type of stories, you're going to really like this.
Well, on that next page, 63 is the next in Dark Horse's EC Archives, and this is The Haunt of Fear, Volume 2, and this is a hardcover. Now, I've said this a number of times on the show, but several years, there have been many incarnations of the EC archives, whether it's gone by that name or otherwise. In other words, publishers that have gone back to reissue or collect previous titles from the old EC comics, especially the horror line, like Haunt of Fear, Haunt of Horror, Shock Suspense stories, even some of their war stories and science fiction fantasy stories or titles. But several years ago, Gemstone began reissuing these comics in their EC archives, and they did this for several years. These really nice hardbound editions with the original ads, recolored, I guess, or at least they tried to reproduce the color to look as best as the originals did. And they were collecting individual titles. In other words, each volume would collect a title in chronological order. So, for instance, the first volume of The Haunt of Fear collected issues 1 through 6. So Gemstone had this title, EC Archives, for a number of years. Then, very, very briefly, GC Press took over the mantle from Gemstone. And then about almost 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, Dark Horse picked up where Gemstone and GC Press left off with the EC Archives. So we have had previously the Haunt of Fear EC Archives Volume 1. So now we get from Dark Horse the EC Archives Haunt of Fear Volume 2.
And Derek, I think I'm going to start picking these up. I mean, I've known about those, and I've seen bits and pieces of reprints of things that were from the EC books. But recently I read a book that I think you probably read too, called The 10-Cent Plague: The Great Comic Book Scare and How It Changed America,
right,
by David Haydu. Reading that gave me a new sense and appreciation of what those guys did, Gaines and all the guys at Feldstein and Jack Davis and all those creators did at EC. If comics history is your thing, or even if it isn't your thing, it's worth reading that book, The 10-Cent Plague, to understand really what it was like back then to create a horror comic, and then how that worked itself out, and all the hubbub over that, and where that led. I mean, it was just an amazing part of comics history to me. But you really, really don't understand it until you actually start reading the comics themselves. So I think these archives are a great, great place to start that, and I want to start picking up some of these. So I'm glad you always mention it when we run across that in the catalog.
Well, on the topic of that book by Haydu, the 10-Cent Plague, I want to skip ahead to page 65. I also have something on 64. But on 65, you'll see another in Dark Horse's archival series, and this is Crime Does Not Pay Archives, Volume 10. What they've been doing over the past 2.5 years is collecting all of the Crime Does Not Pay issues into these nice hardbound editions like they're doing with EC. And the reason I mention this is because Crime Does Not Pay is another one of those titles that was hit hard by the Comics Code, that was really pointed to as one of those titles corrupting youth.
Mm-hmm. And if you read that book, you'll understand why Charles Bureau's name is so prominent on the cover, and why where it's got on the cover, Crime Does Not Pay, crime, the word crime is about 12 times bigger than does not pay. So all of that's addressed in the book. But that's a great one to point out as well.
That was what sold. That was what was salacious at times.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating. It's fascinating stuff to read, and it's fascinating to understand its place in comics history.
Mm. Now, on page 64, I did say that I had something that I wanted to mention, and this is The Complete Love Hurts. And I'm unfamiliar with this, and I don't know about the creator, and that is Kim W. Anderson. Had you heard of Love Hurts or Kim W. Anderson before?
I had not, but I see now, I'm glad you pointed it out, because, Derek, this is one I just completely blew by.
Yeah, and this is, I guess he or she, I'm not sure, is is Swedish, And the solicit is fascinating. It says, lovelorn supervillains, psychopathic online daters, murderous reality TV show stars, and heartbroken cowboys, samurais, and astronauts star in this massive tome from Swedish comics creator Kim W. Anderson, making his, okay, it's a him, it's a he, U.S. debut. Anderson delivers a shocking sense of short stories, a series of short stories about love gone horribly wrong. Romance comics with brutal, terrible twists which show that no matter who you are or what you do, love can be one deadly bitch. So, this is interesting because, on page 63, we highlighted the EC Archives Haunt of Fear, horror. Then on page 65, the Crime Does Not Pay Archives Volume 10, crime. And now here on 64, The Complete Love Hurts, romance, or at least twisted romance.
Yeah, we're all about crime and twisted stuff this go round.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I had something, actually the other thing on page 64 is the Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan, the Sunday Comics 1935 through 1937. And again, this is really great stuff because you've got this wonderful Hal Foster artwork. But again, this one is way out of my price range. 108 pages for $125. But it is a huge book. It's 15 by 20 inches.
Yeah.
So I can't justify it, but I would love to.
It's another one of those like the P. Craig Russell, In a Perfect World purchases.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's all I have in Dark Horse. Do you have anything else?
I have, I think, one other thing, and that's just across the page, and that is, and we're talking about crime, and we're also talking about older things. I'm looking at Bob Powell's Complete Jet Powers, and this was a comic that came out in 1950. It was co-created by Garner Fox, and it was published by Magazine Enterprises. And this is a hardcover. This is a $49.99 book. It collects the Jet Powers number 1 through 4, which I believe turned into the American Air Force's comics. So this is something that wasn't around for that long. But if you're into the the old nostalgic stuff, it looks like it's a lot of fun, a lot of space adventures or jet powered adventures. It looks like it's a bit about the in the cult sci-fi type of thing. So I don't know if I'm going to pick it up, but I'm certainly intrigued.
I'm glad you pointed this out. This, you say you had overlooked The Complete Love Hurts. I had overlooked Bob Powell's Complete Jet Powers. So, that's another genre that's thrown into the mix here over just a mere 3 pages. And we're probably 20 minutes into our discussion of the previous catalog, and we're not even out of Dark Horse yet. And the reason why I wanted to point that out, we said at the top of the show that there's a lot in the June catalog, so this may be a longer episode. But I think it's worth mentioning that we have spent a lot of time in Dark Horse, and I think that that's significant. One of the things I hear a lot of comic readers saying is that, there's a lot that DC offers, there's a lot that Marvel offers, there's a lot that Image offers, but after that, it becomes a mixed bag. Yeah, there's some IDW, there's some Boom, there's a little of Oni, and then Dark Horse, I've heard people say after them losing the Star Wars franchise, there just doesn't seem to be as much from Dark Horse as at least they had been used to. And, I see it differently. One of the things I always find in Dark Horse is, they do have fascinating titles that are in, let's say, ongoing or even limited or miniseries. Most recently we had Lady Killer that was wrapping up or is about to wrap up. So they have series like this. But I tell you, Dark Horse is very much like IDW in that they put out a lot of these wonderful collections. Now some may be out of our price range, but nonetheless, they have archival collections. They pull together older comics, or they publish collections of series that had previously been published either by them or someone else. Mm-hmm. And so I tend to get many more or significantly more of my collections from publishers like Dark Horse and IDW than I do DC and Image, or at least DC.
Yeah, there's like you said, Derek, there's just a wealth of stuff there. And, of course, we already mentioned Matt Kent's Mind Management.
Right.
And another one that I know that both you and I love is The Massive.
Mm-hmm. Massive. Castaways, a new title.
Yeah, Castaways is another one that's got a really strong start. So, yeah, I mean, it's a shame if people, kind of look on Dark Horse with any kind of, thinking that they don't really have anything for me, because they've got quite a bit going on, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Are you ready to move over to the DC Vertigo section?
I am ready to move over, but I have a brief stop at page 124 and page 125.
Well, that's where I am. And, this is in the DC section. And, in fact, this is in DC before you get to Vertigo.
Right, the DC proper.
Right. And so this is something else that both you and I are highlighting, and this is something that I didn't see coming. I guess I should pay attention to the comics news more, and that is Mad's Original Idiots series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun. We've got a book devoted to each of these three creators, one devoted to Jack Davis, one devoted to Wally Wood, and one devoted to Will Elder. And all three of these are ones that I would love to delve into. And, the price is right on these. These are only $14.99 each, and we're talking the shortest one, the Jack Davis one, is 152 pages. The Wally Wood one, 176, and then the Will Elder is 200 pages. These are all, I believe they're soft cover. It looks like they are soft cover.
Yeah, and another thing that's notable about these, this is, and it's fascinating for this reason among others, is DC also came out several years ago with the Mad Archives, and in fact I have all 4 volumes of the nice hardbound Mad Archives, and it collects Mad Comics issues 1 through 24. Here, this is something different. First off, they're paperback, they're not hardcover, but also they don't collect the original issues of Mad Magazine in chronological order. They focus on the work of particular artists. Mm-hmm. So whether it be Jack Davis, Will Elder, or Wally Wood. And it strikes me this is similar to the difference you'll find between now Dark Horse's EC archives and what Fantagraphics is doing with the old EC comics. They're not putting out the EC comics the way that Dark Horse is doing, but what they're doing is they're taking the stories of, primarily one, for the most part, particular creator, like a Wally Wood, like an Al Feldstein, or a Jack Davis, and then collecting those in individual volumes. So you have something similar going on here with Mad, the previous DC Mad archives, or you could collect those stories by artists, Jack Davis, Will Elder, and then Wally Wood. And if you can't decide whether to get the Will Elder or Jack Davis or Wally Wood edition, well, they have solicited on page 125 the complete collection of the works of Jack Davis, Will Elder, and Wally Wood. And so you can get all 3 of these issues in a slipcase edition.
And that's really a pretty good deal.
Yeah. So for all 3 of those books, you can pay retail $44.99, and I'm sure the Discount Comic Book Service will have this for an incredible discount.
I am sure they will.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what other volumes they're going to come out in the Original Idiots series.
Oh yeah, because there were so many great creators that worked on Mad Magazine. I mean, this really just scratches the surface. I mean, those are 3 really big names, but there are plenty more.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we turn the page, there's something that I'd like to highlight, and I hope that we can discuss on the show at some point. Now, I know that we don't do mainstream superheroes, except when it comes to unique and self-reflective takes on the superhero genre. So we have on page 126 the Multiversity Deluxe Edition, and this is a hardcover that will be coming out in October. In fact, the release date is October 21st. And I would really like to discuss this on the show. I'm going to have to talk with Kunka about this. But have you been reading the Multiversity comics as they've come out?
I read the first one and I think we talked about the first one, I think, several months ago, and I thought I would wait until the trade came out. But this is a hardcover edition that's going to come out, and it's a little pricey for me. I was hoping maybe for a trade, or is it coming out in trade paperback as well?
Probably eventually, but now, they're going to come out with a hardbound edition. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should be really nice.
So I'm sure you have something in Vertigo, correct?
Actually, unless one of my sticky notes fell away. I do have, actually not in Vertigo, but just a really brief mention on page 130, Graphic Inc., the DC Comics art of Darwin Cook hardcover. I'm a big fan of Darwin Cook, and I think you are too, Derek. Mm-hmm. And, of course, this is a little superhero based, so I thought I would just slide that in there.
No, and that's good. In fact, I can completely overlook that. But you're right. I'm a Darwin Cook fan. I love his art, and I may have to check this out. I'm going to dog-ear the page right now. See, this is – I know Andy and I both or Kunka and I both say this almost every episode, but this is one of the great things about going through the catalog with someone on the podcast, because as we highlight things, I almost always find something that I overlooked, that either you or Kunka say, this is one of the things I look forward to, and I missed it.
Yeah. Well, that's why we do this.
Now, I do have a couple things in Vertigo. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it, but I'm intrigued. This is on page 133.
Yep, that's the only one I had marked.
Get Jiro, Blood and Sushi, and this is a hardcover. And I say I'm intrigued by it. I may get it. I don't know, because I did not read Get Jiro, which came out about 3 years ago.
I didn't either.
So it seemed interesting. I just didn't get it, and I feel that if I read Get Jiro, Blood and Sushi, I should read the first one first.
Yeah, I would probably pick up the first one too, because I was intrigued by the solicit.
Now, we usually don't mention individual issues of ongoing series outside of the very first one, or maybe if there's a significant new narrative arc. But I think one thing worth noting on page 135 is issue number 26 of Astro City, because it says in the solicit, it's the big 20th anniversary issue. So apparently 20 years since Busick and Anderson started Astro City. Now, it hasn't been going continuously since then, but, 20 years, hey, why not celebrate?
Yeah, why not?
And I love Astro City.
I've only read the first back in the day, the first trade, so it's something I want to get back into. Mm-hmm. So I'm way behind.
Yeah. Do you have anything else in Vertigo? Because I have one more thing.
No, go ahead. I don't have anything until IDW.
Okay, yeah, this is on page 137, and this is the next in the Fables Deluxe Edition. This is book 11. So this will collect Fables issues 86 through 100. And so this is notable not only for the fact that this is the next in the Fables Deluxe Edition collection, but Fables will be winding down this summer.
That's right, it will.
In fact, I think Kunka and I are going to do a show devoted specifically to Fables. I think.
Yeah, you guys should. That would be a good show for fans, and also for people like me that have not really gotten into Fables for one reason or another. I think for me, it's just it looks like a big commitment, but it's something I want to get into. So yeah, I would welcome you guys discussing that.
Yeah, well, we did this, within that first year of the podcast when Hellblazer ended and right before Constantine started. So we devoted an episode to Hellblazer Constantine, so why not do it for Fables? Mm-hmm. So, in the IDW section, where do you begin?
I start with 161. Do you have anything before that?
Yeah, I start on page 150, and this is something that caught my attention because of the genre, the kind of hard-boiled crime noir. And this is Drive, number 1 of 4. Mm. And it says, a hard-boiled pop culture sensation recreated for comics. Now, immediately I felt at a loss because I don't know what this pop culture sensation was. So I'm ignorant of James Salas's Drive.
Well, James Salas's Drive was a pretty famous novel, which I did not read, but I'm assuming that they're talking about the movie Drive.
Okay, so and again, I'm at a loss here. So when did the movie Drive come out?
It was a couple of years ago. It was Ryan Gosling, I believe, was in it. I was not a big fan of it. It just didn't do it for me. And I'm a big neo-noir guy, but it just wasn't for me. And that's probably why I passed this over in the solicit. But actually, looking at some of the art, this actually looks more interesting to me than the movie was.
Yeah, well, it's written by Michael Benedito and art by Antonio Fuso. And you're right, the art does look engaging. It does have a noir feel to it. So apparently Fuso's able to capture that dark tone. Again, I felt at a loss not knowing the novel and especially not knowing the movie. And this is the sad reality of my life, I guess, over the past 10 years especially. I just don't go out to movies anymore, first run. And if I do, it's usually like a Woody Allen film. But even the last Woody Allen film I didn't catch in the theater. So, part of this is, I guess, a residual effect of having a couple of kids. Of course, now the kids are old enough to where, we don't have to stay home because we need to take care of them. They're okay at home by themselves. But on top of that, there is the reality of Netflix. If you can watch things from the comfort of your own home, why pay the money to go out to see a first-run film, deal with the crowds, and all of that stuff? And there is a joy that you don't get from watching something in the theater with other people, but I've just gotten out of that swing over the past 10 years.
Yeah, and don't feel bad because I live almost literally across the street from a movie theater, and I go maybe 4 times a year.
So you say, where do you go next to say 161?
I go to 161, and this is kind of a triple question mark for me. At least that's what I have on my sticky note. This is String Divers, and this is a limited series. This is number 1 of 5, written by Chris Ryall and drawn by Nelson Daniel. And the solicit is Meet the String Divers, a renegade team called upon to save the universe from arcane threats at the submicroscopic level. String theory made real and real thrilling in Unified Chaos Theory, Part 1. Now, there are a couple of things on there that really, really just are zingers with me. And one of them is string theory, and the other is unified chaos theory. Those are things I'm really, really interested in, although I cannot discuss them on any intelligent level. But I just think those are fascinating concepts. But the thing that threw me about this is in the solicit, this says, the first in a continuing universe of comics developed from Ashley Wood's 3A toys. So I wasn't really, really excited about having a comic book that's based on a toy. We see the opposite of that happen a lot. We see toys based on comic books. But I don't know. There's something about this that intrigues me, and I think I probably will give at least this first issue a try.
Yeah, plus Ashley Wood does the regular cover to this, and I like his art.
Mm-hmm.
If we back up a couple of pages, something I forgot, I don't know if I'll get it, but it does sound interesting. This is on 158, and this is Sherlock Holmes, The 7% Solution. This is one of a 5-issue miniseries, and this is written by David and Scott Tipton, and they do a really good job when it comes to the Doctor Who comics, but they've also done Star Trek. Mm-hmm. So I really like their work, and this is a story that brings together both Sherlock Holmes and Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, that might definitely be worth picking up.
Right, so sometimes a pipe is just a pipe. Where do you go next in IDW, if anywhere?
My next is on page 176. And I'm always interested in anything that IDW's Library of American Comics comes out with, because these are great reprints of classic newspaper strips. And what we have here is Walt Disney's Donald Duck, The Daily Newspaper Comics, Volume 1 by Bob Karp. So, again, I'm always interested in the Library of American Comics. So anything that they have that comes out is always on my radar. I'm not 100% sure I'll get it, but I probably will.
Okay. Because I know you've reviewed a couple of those in the series for the blog. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I go next a couple of pages over, 178.
Okay.
And this is Junction, written by Ray Fawkes with art by Vince Locke. And I'm not exactly sure what to make of this. Now, this is a Top Shelf book, but we know that for the past several months, Top Shelf is now part of IDW. So that's why we're finding this in the IDW section. The solicit is interesting. It says, in the near future, new mod culture of parasite addicts and hardcore one-upmanship, Dick Brody has found love. He'll do anything to prove himself to the woman of his dreams, even if it means blurring the boundaries of his flesh with the radical, illegal Junction True procedure. Once he starts, he can never go back. So that's what Junction True is about. And the art, we get a little bit of that, but not much, I guess enough for a flavor. But I really like Ray Fawkes' work, and I know you do too, because you've reviewed him for the blog. And we've discussed Ray Fawkes books in the past on the podcast. And the format of this is interesting. It says that this is going to be a deluxe graphic novel with exposed spine, French flaps, and vellum dust jacket full color. So a lot went into the production of this, and I'm especially curious at the exposed spine part.
Yeah, like you said, I do like Ray Fawkes' work and have enjoyed it in the past, but this is one I just zipped over because, like you said, there's not very much art. It's very small. But now that you bring my attention to it, this does intrigue me.
So anything else on IDW?
I have one other thing on page 181.
Okay.
And again, I'm in the nostalgic mood this month for things. This is a title called Beyond Mars by Jack Williamson, who, if you're not familiar with Jack Williamson, he was a science fiction legend, and artist Lee Elias. And what's interesting about this book, Beyond Mars, this is a reprint of newspaper strips, Sunday newspaper strips, but what's really, really interesting is this strip only appeared in one newspaper, the New York Sunday News. And I'm interested in learning a little bit more about how one newspaper was the only place where this appeared, and how it came to be. Again, this is from the Library of American Comics, and so it's going to be on my radar. Derek, had you ever heard of this title before?
Never have.
I hadn't either, so I'm definitely intrigued.
That's also on the same page as issue 18 of Craig Yo's Haunted Horror, so
yes,
worth mentioning.
Definitely. So that is all I have until we get to Image.
So let's go ahead and discuss Image. And as we usually have in Image, there's a lot to discuss and to salivate over. And I think the first for me, and probably for you as well, is on page, or at least begins on page 184, and that is Phonogram, The Immaterial Girl, number 1 of 6.
Yep.
And so this is by the creative team of Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey, and they brought us the first 2 phonograph narrative arcs, and they also currently do The Wicked and the Divine. Now, do you read The Wicked and the Divine?
That's another one that I read the first issue of, and I thought I want to pick this up in trade, and I know that trade has been out for a little while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And really good stuff. I love The Wicked and the Divine. But this is a return back to a previous independent title that they created, because those guys do work for Marvel. Mm-hmm. But Phonogram is a series that had 2 volumes previously, so now they're coming back to it.
Yeah, that's exciting. I read the first volume of Phonogram years and years ago, so I'd like to revisit that too before jumping into this.
And as we often do in the image section, we have ample sample art for some of their new titles, and here we have on pages 185 through 187, 3 pages worth. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, and it's really nice too.
And in fact, the next new #1 issue in the image section I also wanted to highlight, and this is on page 188. And this is Rich Tomaso's Dark Corridor #1.
I have this as well.
Yeah. So this is set in the fictional coastal city of Red Circle, a city totally controlled by mobsters who, after decades of wielding power, are silently being picked off one by unidentified female assassins. Like a Goodfellas script reimagined by Quentin Tarantino, this sprawling crime adventure will keep you guessing and tuning in for more month after month. Now, I'm not really big on those kind of, much like these movies and TV shows that you know of, because sometimes those are easy to throw out as a reference. Sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're not. You know, Goodfellas reimagined by Quentin Tarantino. Does that really tell me enough about this? Probably not. But still, I think the solicit without that is intriguing enough. And also the fact that it's by Rich Tomaso. This is an independent creator who's known for such works as Clover Honey and 8.5 Ghosts. And in fact, back in the February previews, there was a new edition of Clover Honey that was solicited. And this is the 20th anniversary edition, which is actually redrawn and has, from what I understand, new material. So it'd be worth checking out. But this is another instance of an independent creator who in the past did not have the kind of exposure as, let's say, Image was able to provide, coming to Image, and I hope it really does get his get more people into his work.
Yeah,
because I really
do
love
too.
Tomaso's art.
And you know, we get a really generous sampling, just like we did with the last title too. We get 3 pages of artwork, and the thing that's so interesting to me about this is the characters' noses. And if we look at it, you see a guy, and you just don't see this in comics that much. We see a guy that's just got a flat nose. It just looks like he ran into a brick or something. And then another guy that has like a nose that looks like stairs. I mean, these are really interesting characters, and you expect that in something like they mention here, like a Goodfellas, like a Tarantino. Really, really unique characters. I absolutely love the way that he has drawn the Dodge Challenger on page 191. I'm probably going to buy it just for that, because I'm not a really big car person, but I just love that car, and it's such a beautiful picture of it. But yeah, this looks like it could be a lot of fun.
So there you heard it. Andy's going to read Dark Corridor for the way that Tomaso draws the Dodge Challenger.
Oh, you got to see it.
Now, what about the next #1 that's solicited on page 192, The Beauty?
I have The Beauty marked as well. And again, we get quite a bit of artwork. And for me, the artwork is initially, I don't know about most comics fans, but I have to be pulled in visually first. And I'm certainly pulled in here by Jeremy Hahn's art. And the cover is a really, really unusual cover. You've got the background is all of these just gorgeous flowers, and then we've got what looks like the dead body of a girl in a dress, and her eyes are black and her mouth is black. It's a really stunning image.
I agree. So, and it's an interesting solicit as well. So the solicit, the cover, and then the 3 pages of sample art are definitely enough to get me on board.
Yeah.
What else might you want to highlight in the image section?
Oh, just about everything. But the next thing I do jump to is page 224.
Okay.
Do you have anything before that?
Well, I've marked things, but they're titles that either we've discussed before or at least trade collections of series. I do notice that on page 210, well, actually, now see, they've changed the image section around, so this, I guess, on 210 is not the official solicit, but it's 225 that we get the solicit. This is Nowhere Men. They have a new printing of that.
Yeah, I'm still upset because Nowhere Men didn't go any farther. So people should get that. If you haven't read the first and only trade of Nowhere Men, you should.
Yeah, well, who knows? They may come out with another volume at some point.
I hope they do, because it was a really, really great title.
Okay. So anyway, you say that where do you go next? Did you say?
It's right before Nowhere Men, and that's on page 224. And this is Invisible Republic, Volume 1, trade paperback. And this is by Gabriel Hardman and Corinna Bechko. And when a reporter unearths the secret history of the recently deposed dictator of a remote colonized moon, he discovers exposing secrets can be deadly. So we don't get a lot from that solicit, and we only get the artwork for the cover. But again, we've talked about Gabriel Hardman before. I really, really liked the graphic novel he came out with last year, Kinski. And I believe we mentioned another one of his upcoming books in last month's previews catalog.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on the name of that.
Yeah, but I think, I'm vaguely remembering that as well.
So yeah, I'll pick that up. And it's another one of those great Image entry points for $9.99. So, what have you got to lose?
Yeah. And, there are other trades coming out, first volumes from Image. For instance, on page 227, there's Run, Love, Kill. On page 229, there's The Surface. And then on 230, The Tithe. And so, all of these, what I've done with Image, I was telling someone just the other day, it had gotten to the point last year that there were so many Image titles, new ones coming out, that there was no way that I could financially get number ones as well as to get the number 2, 3, and continuing issues of the other series that I was enjoying through Image. And so I had to make a decision. Do I continue getting the individual issues, or do I switch to probably the more financially viable trade collections? So what I've decided to do with Image, for the most part, not completely, but for the most part, is maybe get the number 1 issues, and then if I like it well enough, I'll pick up the trade when that comes out.
Yeah, and that's a good, like you said, I mean, there's just so much. And even with the entry points, some of these are $9.99, which is great, because it saves you a little bit of money. But, I can't afford all of them.
So yeah, those were the only other things I wanted to mention in Image, those first volume of trades from some of their titles. Do you have anything else in Image that you'd like to bring up?
No, those were the 3 that I was going to mention as well.
Okay. So I'm assuming that both of us will skip over Marvel, since about 99% of what they do, 99.9, maybe 99.8 is superhero stuff.
Yeah.
We get to what a lot of people call the back half of the catalog. And where do you begin? I have something on page 248. Okay,
go ahead, because I have 249.
Oh, okay. This is something from Alternative Comics. Fedor, F-E-D-O-R. This is a one-shot written and illustrated by Pat Kelly. It says, picking up where Todd Browning's Freaks left off, which is always a great way to get our attention. Pat Kelly's Fedor tells the fictionalized story of real-life, turn-of-the-century circus sideshow attraction Jojo the Dog-Faced Boy and his on-again, off-again, globe-trotting forbidden romance with another circus spectacle, the Tattooed Girl. So this is 40 pages at $8, a one-shot from Alternative Comics, which does really good stuff. Or at least it's distributed. But, several months ago, we had news that Alternative Comics was not only going to be distributing their own comics, but also those of several other smaller micro-publishers, very much like Alternative Comics. And I don't know if this is an Alternative Comics title or one of those other micro-publishers, but either way, it doesn't matter. I'm interested in Fedor.
Yeah. I that's another one that I just completely overlooked, but now I may have to take a look.
So what do you have on page 249?
On 249, I have a title called Grubby Little Smudges of Filth by Daniel Reed. How can you pass that up? And this is actually a reissue. This is a trade paperback reissue of a title that came out in 2013, and I'll just read the last part of the solicit. We proudly present Daniel Reed and his cautionary tale about an artist who has created the world's most beautiful piece of art using his own boogers. Now, how can you not like that?
Okay, I can tell that this is the kind of book that you probably want your library to stock.
I want them to, but they probably won't.
Because of the booger thing, really?
I don't know. I don't know. But I'm certainly going to see if they'll pick it up.
Because if this is in your library, that it will be difficult for anyone to check this out. They'd have to get on a waiting list.
That's right.
Because kids love their boogers.
All the kids. Yep. All the kids. And it doesn't say for mature themes. So I don't know. Who knows? It may be somewhat kid friendly. I don't know. I'm certainly going to have a look.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out as well. I don't know if I'll get it, but I'm intrigued. So I have something to mention on page 267. Do you have anything before then?
No.
Okay. And this is in the Avatar Press section. We don't often mention books from Avatar. And I think that, given the kind of reading that you, I, and Kunkka do, we usually don't resonate, or the Avatar titles usually don't resonate with us. But this one, if you're a fan of Garth Ennis's war stories, then they are bringing out new editions of his War Stories Collected, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And both of these are at a retail price at $24.99. So, last month, back in May, we had our On Location episode. We were talking briefly about war comics and how there just aren't as many war comics as there used to be. And we briefly brought up Garth Ennis's Avatar War Stories series. So now if you want his older war stories, then you can get them in these new editions of the 2 volumes.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where you go next, but I also have something on page 274.
Okay, I have 276, so you're pretty close.
Okay, and I don't think I've ever mentioned that. Maybe we've mentioned this when they first started the magazine, Bleeding Cool, because, this is a website, and about a year or more ago, they started to come out with a magazine, and I think it comes out, every 2 months, something like that? It doesn't come out monthly. But I would normally overlook that, except for the fact that this issue, which is number 18, wow, so this has been going on for over 2 years now, it's about, or a good bit of it is going to be about indie comics. So the solicit, it says, standout titles with an indie status in style and sensibility are giving the big 2 a run for their money right now. These are the comics that take risks in subject matter and visual storytelling techniques, but where does this innovation come from? Much of it comes from the field of creator-owned comics gaining increasing momentum. This issue of Bleeding Cool magazine will crack the code on what it means to be indie in comics in 2015 and how great minds are impacting the direction of comics. Rich Johnston will track the rise of independent creators and examine the most influential titles right now, and will delve into the most cutting-edge indie-flavored comics from major publishers this year. So on the one hand, I want to applaud them for looking at what they're calling indie comics. On the other, I want to tell the editors of Bleeding Cool magazine and Rich Johnston, well, where the hell have you been? Hey, the Comics Alternative has been around for about 3 years now, and this is our bread and butter. So I'm curious to see what they would consider indie. So they're saying indie from major publishers. So what about micro publishers, let's say like Alternative Comics or like Conundrum or like Koyama? Would they include those as indie as well? And my guess is they're primarily going to be focusing on more premier publishers like Image and Dark Horse. And what leads me to feel this is on the cover, and you can see this is on page 274, on the cover of Bleeding Cool magazine number 18 is an image that I guess alludes to Lady Killer.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. So, I would say, yeah, that's an indie title, but it's an indie title from a premier publisher. So how indie and alt is that? Now, it's indie and alt, of course, but if you want to get down into the crevices of independent comics, you got to dig a little deeper than that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly what they decide to cover, what exactly they will call, indie. And it looks like, from the first part where it says standout titles with an indie status and style and sensibility are giving the big two a run for their money right now. Maybe it's just anything that's not Marvel and DC.
Yeah, and maybe so.
Maybe they have a pretty, their definition of indie is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, what we should have gotten is some kind of phone call from Rich Johnston in researching this. He should have tapped the Comics Alternative because, as we well know from a few weeks ago, the Comics Alternative was listed as one of Mental Floss's top, 19 podcasts about comics and one of the 3 best in their alt indie category.
Yeah, that was and I know we're very proud of that, and we should be.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, this is what we do.
Yep. So, Bleeding Cool guys, hey, pay attention to the stuff that's out there. There are other people who are focusing on the alt. Okay, so you have something on, what did you say, 276?
276, and this is from Big Planet Retrofit Comics. And, I don't know that I've ever read anything from Big Planet, although I'm looking for a Box Brown title from Big Planet. And this is called The Sea Urchin by Laura Ketzger. And the 2 things that drew me to this are creativity and depression. Ketzner takes a powerful look at creativity and depression, reflection and burdens transmitted through her art that ranges from the mundane to the fantastical. Sea Urchin is only $8. It's a black and white book, and I'm intrigued.
Guess what?
You had it too?
I'm holding it in my hand right now.
Get out of here.
Over the past week, both Kunka and I received not just 1 or 2 comics from Big Planet Retrofit, but a package. I had contacted them about that Box Brown book that was solicited, I believe it was last month.
Yeah.
And so what they ended up doing was sending not only a review copy of the Box Brown, but their current and then the past year's publications. So we got a buttload of comics from Retrofit. And so we're going to be doing a publisher spotlight on Retrofit because of that. And Sea Urchin is one of those new titles that they included.
Oh, you guys suck. I'm kidding.
Okay. Hey, well, yeah, why don't you get in touch with Kunka and say, hey, you suck.
No, I'm kidding. I'm saying that in a friendly way, of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's great because before that solicit for the new Box Brown book, which is called An Eternity Observes All Things, I didn't know about Big Planet, or if I did, it didn't really register. So yeah, that's great to for you guys to do a publisher spotlight because I'm very interested.
Yeah. So, for publishers, if you're listening to this, there's a lesson here. If you send us things like this, we're going to be much more apt to do shows entirely and exclusively devoted to you.
Yeah.
So there you go. And, and not only publishers, but every now and again, creators will contact us and ask if we're interested in reviewing the comic. And we've done that quite a number of times. So, and it's not like we're kowtowing to those either publishers or even independent creators. Anything free that we'll get, we'll review. That's not the case at all. Because, we've gotten solicit from a variety of people that we say thanks, but no thanks, because it's probably not in our wheelhouse. And we don't know if we're the podcast for this title. And I wonder, people who send us superhero stuff, if they know about what the Comics Alternative is all about. Even though we could review non-Big Two superhero titles, which is fine, that would still work within our mission statement. But Yeah, it's always good when publishers and creators reach out to us because we aren't aware of everything out there. And if you help make us aware, we may review it on the show.
Yeah.
Where next do you go in the catalog?
I go to Boom on page 288. Do you have anything before that?
Yeah, I have something on 280, and this, again, this is another one of those titles I don't know if I'll get, but I think it's worth mentioning, and this is issue number 1 of a 4-issue miniseries, Welcome Back, written by Christopher Sabella with art by Jonathan Brandon Sawyer. And, we've talked before about the Boom solicits are a little disjointed at times, what's to love and what it is. But the what it is really gets to what the title is all about, basically the premise. It says, Mally and Tessa have lived hundreds of different lives throughout time, caught up in an eternal cycle as they take part in a war so old that neither side remembers what they're fighting for anymore. As Mally starts to question, as Mally wakes up her newest life, she suddenly becomes self-aware and starts to question everything, especially why she continues to fight. But elsewhere, Tessa is already on the hunt. So, here we have something that's, reminds me of Resurrection Man in a way. That there is, constant resurrection, death and then life, death and then life. But here there seems to be kind of an ongoing feud that has happened so long in the past that they're unaware of what they're fighting. The art looks interesting. Again, I don't know if I'll check it out. I might or I might not, but I do think it's worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned it because I thought about it and I thought, I'm going to pass on this one for now. And somewhere I probably subconsciously thought, Derek's going to pick this one up.
Or at least mention it on the preview show.
Or mention it, yeah.
So you say you go to 284 next?
I go to 288.
Oh, okay, because I have something that I'm definitely interested in on page 284.
Okay.
And this is Bradford Winter and Larry Cohen's, illustrated by Daniel Arizari, America Town, number 1 of 8.
Oh, yeah, I had a question mark on that one.
Yeah, and this, what strikes me is, and I'll quickly read the solicit, after an economic collapse and other disasters in the near future, Americans are now the legal and illegal immigrants living abroad. They find work in cities like Buenos Aires, where their own enclave, known as America Town, has taken root. Owen, a recent arrival, begins a journey to support and save his splintered family divided between the enclave and home back in the United States. His struggle is just a small part of the hardships and conflicting agendas in an immigrant community trying to build itself in the shadow of a once great nation. And one of the things that I find fascinating, I think the main thing, is the timeliness of this. For the past several years, but this is going to ramp up now with the presidential election coming up. There's all this talk about immigration. Do we grant amnesty or what people may call as amnesty? Where do you stand in terms of illegal immigration? And of course, when people talk about immigration, they're primarily talking about Mexico and South American immigrants, right?
Right.
And so there's definitely a racial, sometimes racist element involved in those conversations. And this probably, tells you something about my political leanings. No matter how you couch it, in whatever refined manner, it comes down to suspicion and prejudice, if not outright racism against Hispanics. Okay, because we don't see the same kind of questions and accusations being leveled at other American immigrants. So I find it fascinating that in a time where immigration is a political topic, worth discussing, that it, is definitely out there, then what would it be like if the shoe was on the other foot, so to speak, when it comes to both legal and illegal immigration status, if the Americans or U.S. citizens were either legal or illegal immigrants in other countries?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And again, I'm so glad you mentioned it because normally what I do is I'll make notes on the catalog and then put a sticky note, and I put a question mark on it, but I didn't put a sticky. So I'm really glad you covered that because now I definitely want to take a closer look at this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a huge issue, and I'm glad it's being addressed.
Yep. Okay, so where do you go?
I go to 288, and this is a completed limited series called Butterfly by Arash Amel and Marguerite Bennett. And under the what it is, Butterfly is one of Project Delta's deep cover agents. No birth certificate, no social security number, a complete ghost. When her cover is blown and she's set up for a murder she didn't commit, she is unknowingly led to her father's doorstep, a man she thought died 20 years ago. Trained to trust nothing and no one, Butterfly must decide whether to seek answers with the project or believe the man who betrayed her years ago. And again, this collects the 4-issue miniseries. I remember when this first came out, and I actually picked up the very first issue at the comic shop, and I thought, no, I'm going to wait. I went back, read some reviews. The reviews I read weren't very good, but reading the reviews of issues 2, 3, and 4, it looks like this is a title that got better with each issue. So I'm probably going to at least take a look at this.
It's interesting. Now, is this also an Archaea title?
This is I think it was an Archaea title.
Okay, because, Archaea is to Boom Studios what Top Shelf now is to IDW. So
right.
It's a smaller publisher that reached an agreement with a little bigger publisher that now bears the name of both, in this case, Archaea and Boom Studios. And so I really do, I like Boom books, but I really enjoy especially Archaea titles. I have in the past.
Yeah, me too.
So that's why I wanted to mention that. Do you have anything else in Boom/Archaea?
Nope. I go next to 297.
Okay.
And do you have anything before that?
No, but I have something on 297, and I think it may be the same thing.
Oh, okay. I have two things there. The first thing I have is from Broadway. This is Out on the Wire, The Storytelling Secrets of the New Masters of Radio. And this is by Jessica Abel. Was that the same thing you had?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a graphic novel that delivers a behind-the-scenes look at 5 of the most popular narrative radio shows on the airwaves today, including This American Life and Radiolab. With the help of This American Life's Ira Glass, Jessica Abel, a cartoonist and devoted fan of narrative radio, goes behind the scenes at 5 of the most popular storytelling shows. So, yeah, I'm really I'm a big fan. Initially, I thought maybe this was something that looked at radio from a nostalgic point of view, but I'm actually glad that it's taking a look at shows that are currently, and I would think these are like shows that are podcasted. But I'm really excited about this, and I've enjoyed Jessica Abel's work before in the past, so this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and something that's notable about this outside of the topic, and you're right, this does seem fascinating, her look at narrative radio. I guess for the most part, when we have had work from Jessica Abel over the past several years, it's been primarily one of two things. First, and both of them with her husband, I don't know if they're married or it's just a significant other, Matt Madden. And these are both projects with him. Up until last year, they were the series editor of the Best American Comic series through, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
Mifflin, yeah.
Right. So they did that. And they also did a couple of books for First Second that were kind of teaching how to do comics. Mastering Comics, Drawing Words, and Writing Pictures Continued was the second one, but before that it was Drawing Words and Writing Pictures, Making Comics, Manga, Graphic Novels, and Beyond. So they put a lot of their energies into those two projects, both the editorship of Best American Comics and in this 2-volume series through First Second. So I really like Jessica Abel's work. I absolutely adored La Perdida. I've even done some scholarship on La Perdida, published on that, and have been wanting her to do more of her own stuff. And I know that she was really much consumed, just as Madden was, with the Best American Comic Project. So now it looks like we're going to get to see more of Jessica Abel, the creator.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I like her work too. Like you said, I really enjoyed a book she came out with several years ago called Life Sucks, which is about romance and a vampire, but not the Twilight type, of course. But she's a very interesting creator, and this looks like it. there's so many great things that she could do with this, and I'm just really excited about where she's going to take this topic.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The only other thing I have on that page is a book from Candlewick Press, and Candlewick normally publishes kids or young adult fiction. And this is Baba Yaga's Assistant, and the thing that really drew me toward it is the artwork is by Emily Carroll. And we've discussed Emily Carroll on the show before. So that by itself is enough to get me interested in this.
Huh. Now, see, that's one of those things I completely overlooked because I saw this, Baba Yaga's Assistant, and of course they have the kid-friendly label on it that Previews tends to do. And so because I thought, okay, that's a kid's comic, I ignored it. So I shouldn't have done that because I didn't even see that Emily Carroll did the art.
Yeah, and it's probably, and the thing that makes us different is because I'm a librarian and I'm constantly looking for kids' graphic novels, and so I'm drawn to all of those little kid-friendly stickers that they put on there. So this was the first one that I thought, oh yeah, we got to get this.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like any boogers are involved in this one.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Now, if they come out with a book, Baba Yaga's Boogers.
Oh yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah. I have a brief stop on page 300 before I go on. Do you have anything before then?
I have a little mention on 299 right before that.
Sure.
And that is the Marquise of Anon, Volume 1, The Isle of Brack. And this is by Fabian Velleman. Mm-hmm. And this is a Cinebook, and I really, really enjoy it. I haven't read many of the Cinebook titles, but I have read a couple of them, and I really, really like those. So this is France, the 18th century. Young Jean-Baptiste Poulain travels the country to investigate unexplainable crimes and fight against obscurantism. I hope I said that right. So, again, this is a publisher that I like. Most of the titles that they publish that I have read are very short, and this one is only 48 pages. But I'll probably check this out.
Yeah, I will too. You know, this is another one of those I'm glad that you mentioned. I missed that one, and I'm definitely interested because just last year I finally got around to reading Fabia Velleman's Beautiful Darkness. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Oh, God, a wonderful, wonderful book. In fact, I was going to write a review of it along with a few other books, kind of a review essay for the blog, but I just never got around to it. I may still, I don't know. But Beautiful Darkness was one of my most enjoyable reads from last year. And in fact, on Beautiful Darkness, Carrascoet, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but that is the, I guess, art team, because it's two people, who illustrated Beautiful Darkness. But here, the artist is Bonhomme, Mathieu Bonhomme. Yeah, I want to check this out. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Mm-hmm. So if you turn the page on to 300, and again, just a brief mention because we've already discussed this on the show, but it's worth pointing out again from Conundrum Press. The Adventures of Drippy the Newsboy, Volume 1, Drippy's Mama. Again, I enjoyed this one. A couple of weeks ago, Andy, you and I did a publisher spotlight on Conundrum, and we had a really good time discussing their spring releases, and Drippy the Newsboy Volume 1 was one of those. And one of the things I particularly liked about it, if you remember, is the fact that this is the first of a trilogy that is based on Stephen Crane narratives. Mm-hmm. So Drippy's Mama is based on George's mother, and then the next one, which is coming out later this year, is based on the Red Badge of Courage. And I'm curious to see if the third one is going to be based on Maggie, a Girl of the Street.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah,
maybe Drippy turns male prostitute.
Maybe. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and even though this is the only title this month in previews from Conundrum Press, I'm glad to see it again, and I'm glad it reminds us of the podcast we did. And hopefully listeners will visit that spotlight, that publisher spotlight on Conundrum, and check out Drippy and the other titles we talked about.
Mm-hmm. So where do you go next in the catalog?
I go next to Drawn and Quarterly on 322. Do you have anything before?
I just want to mention this is not a book, but it is an action figure on page 318. Okay, so if you look on 318, it says Podcast Pals Static Vinyl Figures by Vinimates. And they're 4 inches tall. It says the first toys ever based on a podcast. Now, the subject of Vinimates Podcast Pals, Kevin Smith and Jay Muse. And so basically you have, the Silent Bob, Kevin Smith, this phenomena. And, okay, they're podcasters. That's not primarily what they are. So they're going to base their first podcast action figures on people who dabble in podcasting but who aren't primarily podcasters. Come on.
Yeah, where's the Derek Royal action figure? You know?
Yeah.
That's what we want. You and Kunka, that would be awesome.
Yeah, the 2 guys with PhDs action figures.
Yeah.
And so, riveting adventure of sitting at a desk reading or writing an essay that is sure to rock the world.
Right, or grading papers.
Grading papers, yeah. You can't get more exciting than that. And, we could subtitle this the whining or the Derek whining episode because, I was getting on the case of the editors at Bleeding Cool magazine, and it's like, oh, you're just now getting around to indie? There are others who have done this, and now we have me bashing Vinimates with their new Podcast Pals action figures. So, Vinimates, screw you. But however, I will take that back if you decide to do a comics alternative action figure campaign. That'd be great.
Yeah. And why not?
Why not? Okay, so on to something a little more tangible, and that is Drawn and Quarterly.
Yeah, and Derek, we've talked about that, and I know you and Andy have talked about it too. Just we might as well say just buy everything that Drawn and Quarterly has in the catalog, and you can't go wrong.
Mm-hmm. So, what in particular in this month's solicits and Drawn and Quarterly do you want to highlight?
Well, I'd certainly like to highlight the guy. Is it Delisle? How do you say his name?
Guy Delisle?
Guy Delisle, of course. I should have known.
I think.
Yeah. And these are...
We can ask Mark from last week, remember, who wrote in about how we mispronounced...
Mark, help us out. You could help us out here. And, Derek, I don't even know if these are resolicits. I assume that they're probably resolicits.
Yes.
The owner's manual to terrible parenting, even more bad parenting advice, and a user's guide to neglectful parenting. And I missed these the first time around, so I definitely like to pick these up.
Yeah. Now, something that Drawn and Quarterly does every month is they solicit the 1 or 2, sometimes more, new titles that they have coming out. But then in addition to that, they will re-solicit works, usually from 1, 2, maybe sometimes 3 different creators. So this month, the re-solicits are these books by Guy Delisle. Then you have the Moomin titles that are also resolicited. And they do that with Moomin all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think, though, that the new titles for in this month's Drawn and Quarterly section, it's Adult Contemporary by Bendik Kauterborn, and then Melody, a story of the new dancer by Sylvie Rancourt. And apparently Melody, a story of a nude dancer, and right there you have my attention. This is the first time that this is coming out in an English translation.
Oh, okay.
So both of those are worth checking out, as well as these resolicits, things that came out previously through Drawn and Quarterly. So as we always say, you cannot go wrong with Drawn and Quarterly.
That is true.
So I hop over to Fantagraphics next.
Mm-hmm. Another place you cannot go wrong with.
Oh God! And this is like a comics orgasm for me. In many months, it's that way at Fantagraphics. Not every month. I mean, last month they had a few good things, but not nearly as many as they have this month. But I don't even know where to begin.
Well, let's go at the beginning. I am super excited about this first one, the Eternaut by Hector Germain. Osterheld and Francisco Solano Lopez. This is published for the first time in English, a 1950s Latin American science fiction graphic novel. I am super excited about this coming out, and I'm definitely going to pick this up.
Yeah, I am too. And in fact, I have a friend in comic studies and comics criticism who actually he's living in Buenos Aires. And I met him at a conference about 3-4 years ago. And he has done studies of the Eternaut. But of course, it's never been translated in English, Eternaut, and nor his work on that, and so I wasn't able to really get into it. But I remember him telling me about Eternaut, and now this is finally going to be coming out through Fantagraphics, the first time in English. So I'm excited about this. I'm going to get in touch with him and say, hey, I can talk with you about this title now.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this.
Well, I tell you, my super excitement comes, I guess, first and foremost from the book that is solicited right next to it. And according to the editors of previews, this is a certified cool book. This is by one of my favorites, Bill Griffith. Invisible Ink, My Mother's Love Affair with a Famous Cartoonist. And there are 2 exclamation marks after that. Now, there are several things that are notable about this. And first, this is Bill Griffith's first long-form narrative. If you're not familiar with Bill Griffith, then shame on you. You have a big gaping hole in not only your comics awareness, your comics history awareness, but also your pop culture awareness. Bill Griffith is the mastermind behind Zippy the Pinhead. I absolutely love Zippy. I have almost every Zippy collection that ever came out. I even have all the issues of the old Zippy Quarterly that came out years ago from Fantagraphics. So I love Zippy. But, you know, those are strips. It started as shorter comics and then strips in the late 60s, definitely the 1970s. But now you can find Zippy the Pinhead in a variety of newspapers. It's carried by King Features, of all places, which I find fascinating, in that King Features is one of the oldest and I think most conservative, I would guess, distributors of newspaper strips. And Zippy is one of the most offbeat, arguably radical strips out there, at least in terms of its worldview. So I always thought it was interesting that it's now carried by King Features. So I'm a big Zippy Pinhead fan, but what makes this stand out is it's a long-form comic, and it has nothing to do with Zippy. It says that this is a memoir, actually, that recounts Griffith's mother's secret life in the 1950s and 60s. The story unfolds like a detective narrative, alternating between past and present as Griffith recreates suburban Levittown and Manhattan in the 1950s and 60s. Griffith finally discovers his mother's amorous past in her diary and puts the pieces together to reveal a mother he never knew. So he found out, apparently through his mother's diary, that she had an affair with a famous cartoonist. And I'm curious to see who that cartoonist is. But Bill Griffith became a cartoonist, a famous cartoonist. So there's something very intriguing and potentially twisted about that.
You got any ideas who it might be?
I do not know.
Yeah.
But you know, even if the secret were revealed, I'd still get this book. So I'm definitely wanting to get this, read it, and maybe discuss it on the episode on the Comics Alternative.
Yeah, definitely. And if you are part of that group of people that Derek mentioned and have not experienced Bill Griffith before, they are offering again 3 books: Bill Griffith Lost and Found comics, 1969 to 2003.
Great.
Zippy, Walk a Mile in My Moo-Moo. Zippy, The Dingberg Diaries. So you can get caught up on your Bill Griffith.
That's right. And the Walk a Mile in My Moo-Moo and the Dingberg Diaries are, I think, the most recent collections of the Zippy strips. And then Griffith's Lost and Found comics from 69 to 2003, that came out about 4 years ago. And that's a collection of his shorter non-Zippy comics that have come out during that time period. So, and that was one of my favorites of 2012, as I said on the podcast, that year-end show.
That's right.
Yeah. But, you know, the fun is not over with Fantagraphics. You know, I'm a big fan of Ed Piskor's Hip Hop Family Tree, And last year we had volume 2 or book 2 of Hip Hop Family Tree collected. Now, Hip Hop Family Tree is a webcomic that comes out on Boing Boing. And what Pisker's been doing over the past couple of years is collecting those into book form. Book 2 came out last year. The year before that, Book 1 came out. So we have a solicit for Book 3, Hip Hop Family Tree, that covers the years 1983 through 1984. Okay, so that would be a cause to celebrate enough. But the other big news, and I had heard about this, I got an email about it this past week, is that Hip Hop Family Tree is turning into a monthly comic.
Yes, I was very excited to see that as well.
Yeah, and not only is this notable because you have this webcomic that is becoming now a monthly, but it has been, I can't remember the last ongoing series, definitely a monthly, that Fantagraphics has ever done. I don't know if they've ever done a monthly, and if those who are more steeped in Fantagraphics history and lore want to write to correct me, but I think this may be their first monthly comic. And if not their first, then it's their first monthly in ages. So, and they've come out with regular single issues about every other or third month or so. For instance, the old Love and Rockets, or Peter Bag's Hate, those kind of titles. But this is going to be a monthly.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I've only read the first volume of Hip Hop Family Tree, which I thought was just amazing. So I'm a couple behind. But yeah, this is really great news, and I think there's not a better place for them to do that, giving the monthly issues than with Hip Hop Family Tree.
Mm-hmm. And again, the fun never stops at Fantagraphics this month, because also on page 326 is a new work from Jason. Mm-hmm. And Jason is a Scandinavian comics creator, and who's been coming out with work through translation through Fantagraphics, or at least American versions through Fantagraphics for a number of years. And this latest collection is called If You Steal. So it consists of 11 wildly off-kilter stories that mixes elements of pop culture with a variety of genres, pastiches, and mashups in a delightful melange of graphic storytelling.
Yeah, I like Jason's work a lot. So this is always welcome when he's got a new title.
Mm-hmm. And then on the next page, there are 2 other interesting titles coming out from Fantagraphics. If I limit myself to just getting all of these Fantagraphics titles solicited this much, which I'm not, then it's easy to go broke very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But one of those is Chicago by Glenn Head. And it's been a while since we've seen anything from Glenn Head. In the solicit, it says that here Head presents the hilarious and harrowing tale of 19-year-old Glenn, so I guess autobiographical, who abandons suburbia for the gritty, unknown streets of Chicago, where he fends off street predators and depression. So it says, exposure to the work of R. Crumb offers entree into the world of comics, but a chance encounter with Muhammad Ali allows him to truly prove his mettle. So this is intriguing.
Yes, it is. And the one next to it is intriguing as well, The Book of Hope by Tommy Musturi, who is a Finnish artist. And this Book of Hope slows the reader down to the rhythms of a retired couple living in the countryside. Beyond the static routine moments of everyday life, something bigger takes shape. Intimations of mortality start to consume the husband, leading to visions and questions. This graphic novel is a thoughtful exploration of the human condition, filled with timeless humor found in the series of moments that make up our lives. Musturi's eloquence and economy will remind American readers of Chris Ware's Jimmy Corrigan. And if you do just a little Google search on Musturi and see some of his artwork, it's pretty amazing. So this is definitely something that I would like to pick up.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Boy, it's like we spent all that time on Fantagraphics, almost as much time it seems as drawn in Dark Horse.
Yeah. Oh wow, so much great stuff.
Mm. But okay, so Fantagraphics comes to an end because we've mentioned almost, I think, all but one of their new titles that they solicited. And I go next to page 329.
Me too.
Yeah, so what do you want to highlight there?
Actually, I've got 2, and they're both, one Well, one is from Fanfare Presents, and this is 24 by 7. Is that the one you had, or was it the next one?
No, the one by Borderline Press.
Okay. So 24 by 7 at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, October 2014, in the small market town of Kendal in England, 7 artists entered a room and started to draw. By 9 p.m. the following day, 7 books were being collected from the printer to form part of the Lakes International Comics Art Festival. The artists worked around the clock on coffee and smiles to produce, quote, a spread of 7 comics as diverse as they are witty, as they are beautiful to behold. From witches to scribbles, paperclips to salty tales, hand-me-downs to chance encounters and doomed love, all were created in 24 hours by quality artists Sarah McIntyre, Joe Deci, Christina Bakzinski, Fumio Obata, Jack Teagle, and many, many more.
Yeah, that looked interesting. I had thought about mentioning that. But there's another one under it that I think that you're interested in as well, and this is from Borderline Press, and it's written with art by Knut Larsen, another Swedish creator, City of Crocodiles. This is a post-apocalyptic surreal fantasy by one of Sweden's brightest talents. A mystic and mythical tale of one man's search for something he wasn't aware he needed. In a flooded city between the houses, crocodiles swim. The crocodile hunter sells his catch to the butcher. His payment is gas and booze. They sit and play card games of croco chess and drink glasses of crocodile wine. At home, crocodile soup simmers on the stove while the hunter sleeps in his armchair. At dawn, he gets a strange catch in his nets. This wordless drama draws you in and keeps hold of you, protecting you from the cold and slimy embrace of this world of crocodiles. So this is 148 pages of wordless comic fun, it looks like.
It does look like fun, and I don't know if I'm intrigued by the crocodile wine, but the rest of it does sound pretty fun.
Yep. Okay, where do you go next?
I go to Oni on 356, so if you have anything before that.
Yeah, on 333 by Gen Manga Entertainment, something looks interesting. It's called Let's Eat Ramen and Other Doujinshi Short Stories, and this is by Nagumo Ajichi. This is a collection of stories that looks intriguing. I won't read the solicit, but it did get my attention, especially in light of our relatively new monthly manga feature.
Okay. Yeah, I did not even... this didn't hit my radar, but glad you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. And I next go to 350. So where did you say you go?
356.
Okay, so yeah, this is on 350, a new publication coming out from NBM, Fires Over Hyperion. This is with both written and illustrated by Patrick Atangan, Atangan, Atangan. So I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name. Imagine Sex in the City, written by a gay Charlie Brown. Okay, so that got my attention. One day I woke up and realized I had been dating for 20 years. 20 years. It's hard to imagine anyone with as little resolve as I have doing anything for so long. In this autobiographic, and that was a quote, in this autobiographical work, Patrick Atangan, I'm sure I'm butchering that name, please forgive me, documents his sad hilarity of his love life, from awkward first encounters to finding out that the great guy you've been dating already has a boyfriend, to the sad inevitability of a breakup. With a dark sense of humor, Atangan navigates the perils of the gay world. So this sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does. And he also has another book right below that called Invincible Days.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, Invincible Days is something that Beth C., a reviewer at the Comics Alternative blog, actually wrote a review on. So there you go. So on 356, you may have highlighted the same thing that I did.
Yes, the Krogan Adventures.
Yes.
Is that what you had? Yeah. The Krogan Adventures 5-year service by Chris Schweitzer. And I believe this is a series that started about 2008 or so, 2007, 2008. Does that sound right, Derek?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But it has been going on a while. It's a historical adventure series, and this is a full-color edition. Again, 5-year service. And I won't read the entire solicit, but there is a nice little blurb by Jeff Smith. The artwork is exciting, and the pace never lets up. Krogan and his French legionnaires bring history alive, full of fun and truthfulness.
So that's something to look forward to coming out from Oni. And in fact, on the next page, we get the final volume of Wasteland, the Apocalyptic Edition. So, Wasteland is one of those series, kind of like Fables this year, that is wrapping up. Also, The Sixth Gun, another Oni title, is wrapping up this year. So now we get the last Apocalyptic Edition of Wasteland. And the thing about the Apocalyptic Editions, they collect Wasteland in trade, but these Apocalyptic Editions are nice, oversized, hardbound editions. So if that's how you get your Wasteland, then the very last volume will be out later this year.
Yep.
So I go next to page 365. How about you?
No, I have 368, so go ahead.
Okay, and this is from Seven Stories Press and Ted Rawls' biography of Snowden. So Edward Snowden gets his own comics biography.
Interesting.
So, that's about all I have to say about that. Ted Rall does a lot of interesting things and sometimes controversial things. So I guess as a part of that controversy and his persona, this may be part and parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. So, okay, so you went to 360 what?
368, and this is just a brief stop, again, because of the kid-friendly sticker that they have on there. Stone Arch Books is coming out with 4 books, or maybe these are even reissues that I've missed before. And these are graphic novels based on classics. We have Around the World in 80 Days, Peter Pan, A Christmas Carol, and Robinson Crusoe. So I'm always interested again in things that will appeal to kids, and these adaptations, I'll be interested to see how faithful they are and how good they are.
Yeah. So I know that this has been a long look through previews, but I think we may be coming into the home stretch.
Yeah, I only have three more things to mention.
Okay, now I have something in Titan. How about you?
No.
Okay, so on page 380, we have solicited new Doctor Who property, and this is a Doctor Who event. 4 Doctors, issue number 1. And, as we know, last year, Titan got the Doctor Who franchise from IDW. And I liked what IDW was doing with it, but Titan seems to be doing well in its own right. So right now they have 4 series, either ongoing or limited right now, with the various Doctors. They started off with, Doctors 10 and 11, Tennant and Smith. And then they did a series with the most recent, the 12th Doctor. And then they did, I think they're in the middle now of this mini-series with the 9th Doctor, Eccleston. So they can't let just those 4 titles lie by themselves. They have to come out with another series, or at least an event, a limited series event. And this is the Doctor Who event 2015, 4 Doctors. So it's going to bring various Doctors together.
Yeah, might be fun.
So if you like Doctor Who and you can't get enough Doctor Who, then you got the 4 Doctors coming up in a couple of months.
Yep.
Okay, so you say, where do you go next?
I go next to 384, and this is from Toon Graphics. And if listeners are not familiar with Toon Graphics does a lot of, as you might think, graphic novels for young readers, and most of these are fairly short. In fact, I reviewed one on my blog, Journeys in Darkness and Light. It is a New York City subway adventure, which was a great book for kids. This is one called Little Nemo's Big New Dreams by Art Spiegelman and Francois Mouly. Mm-hmm. Art by Gerard and various other artists. And Winsor McCay's legendary... Gerhard. Mm-hmm. Winsor McCay's legendary comic strip Little Nemo in Slumberland has inspired today's foremost cartoonists to craft their own dreamlands. From the original broadsheet-sized edition, we have selected more than 30 glorious, unforgettable, or even silly dreams. Join Nemo on his journey out of 1905 and, dream by dream, explore the wild and wonderful world of today's most imaginative dreamers. Now, not only do I like this because I really love Little Nemo and all the original things that are Little Nemo. I like the Little Nemo inspired things as well. And again, these are titles from Toon Graphics for young readers. And everything I've seen by Toon Graphics has been exceptional quality. So I know this will be no different. So I'm really looking forward to this, not only for the library, but for me. Yeah.
And a little while ago, I mentioned one of our reviewers for the blog, Beth C. She has also reviewed, I think, 2 Toon graphic books for the Comics Alternative blog. So this may be something else that either she or you will tackle if we don't discuss it on the show.
Yeah, and if you have kids, you really should check these out. And our library has them. Your library probably does as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned this title in light of Little Nemo, and it's worth mentioning that on page 368 we have resolicited a couple of different collections of the original Little Nemo in Slumberland. The first one is from Sunday Press Books, and that is Little Nemo in Slumberland, Many More Splendid Sundays, and I think this is the second volume. The first one, if I'm not mistaken, is called So Many Splendid Sundays, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And then under that is solicited from Taschen, a book that came out last year. Actually, I have a copy of it, and this is The Complete Little Nemo, 1905 through 1927. And in fact, this is one that is nominated for an Eisner Award for this year. So, and I can tell you, this is a big-ass tome.
Yeah, I have the first volume of the first Splendid Sundays, and that's a pretty big one too. But this is the big kahuna here.
Yeah, and I still haven't decided where the hell I'm going to put that book. But anyway, so it's nice to have that in a very, very oversized edition. So yeah. Now I go next to Viz Media.
Okay, I have actually 2 more stops and I'm done.
Okay, so
I have one on 385.
Okay,
and this is from Uncivilized Books.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I wanted to highlight that as well.
Oh, did you mark that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is called Robot Investigator by Vincent Stahl, and a lone robot investigates an abandoned planet. What happened to the inhabitants? Who were they? Robot Investigator follows a lonely robot on an expedition to a mysterious planet that looks a lot like Earth. And it says at the end of the solicit, Robot Investigator is both sweet and melancholy, cute and grisly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one of those great books coming out from Uncivilized, and we are still planning on a publisher's spotlight on Uncivilized Books, and we've been talking about this with Tom Kaczynski, who is the publisher of Uncivilized. We've been talking with him about this for quite a number of months, but we just haven't been able to bring this about yet. But we will do this at some point soon, and who knows, we may discuss Robot Investigator on that show when we do it.
That would be cool.
And then where else do you go?
Actually, I have something after Viz Media, so
okay.
Mine's on 412.
Okay, so my one mention, and this is going to be brief, in Viz Media, this is on page 403, Ultraman. And the reason I mention this it says a new Ultraman story based on the classic Japanese superhero TV show from the 1960s. I'm not going to get this, but I remember growing up watching the old, at least U.S. Ultraman cartoons. Did you?
No, I'd never heard of them.
Oh, God, Ultraman. I thought that the theme song was so lame. Ultraman, he's got powers and abilities. More, I can't remember the lyrics, but it was one of those that my friends and I used to make fun of, and it was kind of like Speed Racer in that kind of animation where you don't have that much movement. Very stripped down, not smooth transition from scene to scene, or at least from action to action. So and they did that to make the animation relatively inexpensive or cheaper. And so we used to make fun of that comic, but now they're coming out with a new version of Ultraman based on the anime. So there you go. A blast from the past.
I might pick that up.
Okay, so what did you say you have after Viz?
My final one is on page 412, and this is from Zest Books. And this is a title called Prison Island, a graphic memoir by Colleen Frakes. And this is actually about McNeil Island in Washington State, which was the home of the last prison island in the United States, and the only way you could get to it was by air or by sea. And it was also home to about 50 families, including Colleen Frakes. And her parents, like everybody else on the island, they worked in the prison, and her father was the prison's captain, and her mother worked in security. And so it's kind of a story about what it was like growing up in very unusual circumstances in a prison atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Now, is it Frakes or Frakies?
I called it Frakes, but I don't know.
Because, excuse me, on Star Trek The Next Generation is Jonathan Frakes, I think.
I think you're right.
So, yeah, and that's one that I had overlooked as well. So I'm glad that you pointed out that one to me. And that's all the comics I have. Now, there are a couple of books that I wanted to highlight in the book section.
Okay.
On page 420, there are a couple there. There's one, and I'm not sure. I should have looked up the publishers. I guess I can do that quickly afterwards. And that is the first one is Bending Steel, Modernity and the American Superhero. And this is written by Aldo J. Regalado. So that looks interesting. And then the other one right under it I'm especially interested in, and this is a collection of essays, I guess, edited by Daniel Warden, The Comics of Joe Sacco, Journalism in a Visual World.
Okay.
So
yeah,
this covers, most of what Sacco is known for is the journalism comics.
Yeah, I actually did a quick look, and Bending Steel is University Press of Mississippi, which I suspected.
Yes, that's what I thought. And in fact, this is also University Press of Mississippi, so that just makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those who listen to the podcast on a regular basis should already know this because we mention this often, but if you're not aware of it, University Press of Mississippi has probably the most robust collection of critical scholarly works on comics. Now, they do a lot on pop culture in general, but they, I think, are specifically suited to comic studies. So I know I have a couple of projects right now that will be coming out in the future from University Press of Mississippi. So I'm not unbiased here by saying it's probably the best publisher of comics studies scholarship. But, I mean, there are others as well, but I think that University Press of Mississippi is the one that stands above the rest of the relatively small pack.
And speaking as someone who is not a comic scholar, though, I own a couple of those titles and have checked out several others from the library, and they're really top-notch. I mean, you cannot beat the level of scholarship and the amount of information you get from those books.
Andy, this has been another long episode, and we warned listeners going in, and we warned each other that each of us had a lot that we wanted to mention in the June previews catalog. So maybe July will be kind of crappy, and there won't be that many good books, and we can shorten the episode. But man, June, a lot of things worth mentioning.
Yeah, there's just so much in there, and you just have to pace yourself and take some deep breaths. Your favorite beverage will help. Whatever it takes to get through the previews catalog.
That's right. And even though their specials are not up yet on their website, if you check in a few days and go to dcbservice.com, you'll find that our sponsor, discountcomicbookservice.com, is the place to get many of the titles, in fact, all of the titles that we mentioned in today's podcast. And the majority are going to be at very deep discounts, but everything is at a discount of some sort. So go to the website, dcbservice.com. They'll take care of all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And please tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you. And after you do pre-order your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you're going to be reading. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll see a tab on the right-hand side of your browser that says Send Voicemail. Click it, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can leave us a message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's just that simple. But if you want to be a little more difficult about things, then you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
And you can always find out what's going on with the latest news from Twitter. We update news to the blog and to the podcast. You can follow us. We're at 2 Guys with PhDs. That's the number 2. And we appreciate everybody that favors our tweets and retweets our tweets.
Yeah, that really goes a long way in helping us. And we like to find out who likes us enough to retweet and favorite. So thank you for that. You can also get in touch with us via email. You can reach both of us at 2 Guys, that's TWO Guys, at comicsalternative.com. You can contact me directly at Derek at comicsalternative.com. And Andy, how can they get in touch with you?
You can contact me at Wolverton at comicsalternative.com.
You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, and on Google+. You can always subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can always stream us through Stitcher. And you can always find us on TuneIn. But you can especially find us in every single one of our episodes, as well as our reviews and comics-related commentary that we put up on our blog at our website, which is comicsalternative.com.
Yep, all kinds of ways to figure out where we are, what we're doing. You can't turn around without bumping into us.
That's right, and we do like to hear from you. And, before we go, Andy, I know that it's been a long enough episode, but maybe this will be a way for listeners to tell us that they have listened to the entire episode, our June preview show, by saying, hey, I heard what you said at the very end of the show. We've mentioned a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, in fact, on this episode, you and others who have done reviews on our blog. And it's been a long time since we've done this, but I want to put out an invitation to our listeners. If you have some writing skills and you would like to write in a very intelligent and critical way, and I'm not talking about scholarly, I'm just talking about something more than, ooh, isn't that cool, kind of critical assessment. If you want to write for the Comics Alternative blog, given the scope of our show, basically anything is fair game other than mainstream superheroes, then I invite you to get in touch with us and let us know that you're interested. And in fact, if there are specific titles that you're interested in, you can suggest those. And if we're not covering it in a podcast episode, or if someone else hasn't claimed it for the blog, then hey, it's yours. Review it for us. In fact, Andy, that's how you and I became acquainted. You contacted me at one point and said, I would like to do reviews for the Comics Alternative blog.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I think I sent Derek a couple of samples, and he said, why don't you review something for us?
So there you go. And look at you now. You're co-hosting the show on a regular basis now.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, so we do appreciate people getting in touch with us and letting us know that not only do they enjoy the podcast, but they would like to write for our blog. So we invite you to do so. I mean, don't just start sending us things cold. Get in touch and see if maybe we're interested, and send us some samples of your writing. I would very much like to see that. And, if it works out, we'd like to feature you as a reviewer on the Comics Alternative blog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So however you get in touch with us, and for whatever reasons, we do want to hear from you. So get in touch. Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy.
And we will see you next week.
Quaker Oats. It's the right thing to do.